to find if what I was doing was grounded. Um, so, anyways, just a little bit about me. In the 90s, I was a network administrator. I did network installations, repair, stuff like that. In the 2000s, I focused on networking hardware. I did a lot of things where I connected dissimilar networks. I worked specifically with architects, engineers, and construction people connecting up remote locations over the early internet, stuff like that. In around 2005, I got really into the hosting side of things, the data center side of things, where all of these big fancy connections come together and meet in a common place to host large applications. That's kind of where I segued away from networking and networking and computing, and kind of dove into programming. When you're in that side of things, you have, when people bring you a data line that's transmitting financial information, it's not something that you can usually just connect up without having the programming side of things. So I got really into that. And then in about 2010, everything took this huge shift to big groupings of concepts, like things were sold more commonly on marketplaces. Hosting was done more under big companies like GoDaddy. So all of this industry that I was familiar with was drying up real fast. The local hosting connectivity concepts were gone. Dial-up is dead. All of these things were over with. So at the end, around 2015, I decided I had gotten a little bit of a peek into the back end as to how a lot of people did business, especially with online sales. And I got a peek into how some of these stores worked, how these e-commerce worked. So I wrote an algorithm in Python for myself. And what it did is it walked around Amazon and it found all the products that were selling really well. But what it did is it found all the products that were selling really well, it didn't have enough sellers to fill the orders. So that's illegal. You can't do that. But what it showed me is that there was easier ways to write algorithms to find information. It's just that was hiding in plain sight. So I started to buy those products that didn't have enough sellers, and I would price them $1 below the seller that was up there. So you take over their listing, so you have instant sales. So I walked away from all of networking, all of hosting, everything, and I just focused on this algorithm type business to find new and better things to sell online. So I've done this ever since. But anyways, when you go and you fool around with algorithms, the people who talk about them are the people who do stock. It's just dominated by that group of people.
People who what?
Who do stock algorithms,
Of course.
stock market algorithms, for whatever capacity, Forex, everything. So I was like super sucked into that, because even in the times when I would go outside and look for help about algorithms as I was using them on Amazon, you have to inadvertently use the analogies of stock, because that's how your peers are using them. So that's kind of how this started. But once I saw the success people were having with algorithms, I was kind of super sucked in, and that just took over. That was 3 years ago, and it's all I do now. So basically,
Are you open for questions through the?
yeah. Okay. So let me say this. So I wrote this whole presentation, and it's easily 4 hours. So I've chopped it down significantly. And I ran it by my wife, and she's like, you gotta leave the technology out of it, because no one cares.
Wrong. Geeks in the room.
And you gotta leave that piece off. So this was so incredibly hard for me to figure out, because no one really wants to talk about how they do it or anything, that I put a website together, and I put everything I'm talking about here and about another 3 hours worth of info on it. So just kind of listen to me. Don't feel like you need to write anything down, because anything that I've missed is way more completely answered in that.
Except the URL.
I'll give that to you at the end. I don't want any So, yeah, so please, I prefer the tech side of stuff, and I prefer the details. So if you have a question, just stop me, just interrupt me, and I'll answer it. I think that would be better. These are very cumulative concepts. They're going to build fast, so I think if you have questions, I should answer them. Is that good?
You mentioned that you're a programmer
Yeah.
and all of that, and I'm not a programmer, but I'm
Yeah.
doing well in the
Yeah,
market.
yeah.
So I get people calling me from DC and this, that,
Yeah.
that are scientists and programmers and stuff. And I said, you know what you're doing, I have data scientists, which you
Yeah.
know what they are and so on, but you don't have the domain knowledge, if you know what I mean by domain knowledge. So how did you kind of overcome that gap between skill in programming and lack of domain knowledge, or you just learned as you go?
Let me try to.
Do you understand
Yeah,
that?
let me try to answer it, but if I'm off, correct me. So you cannot be in a vacuum in high-end wide area networking and not program.
Mhm.
So really, when you're working on Cisco equipment, there is no pretty windowy looking environment to configure it in. It's all hardcore command line, like
Mhm.
back in the day stuff. So you're really always programming. It's not as if I just walked into this. That's unfair to articulate it that way. So I took Python classes when I needed them in the beginning, but more importantly, I was very open with what I was doing. And when you're that way with people, they are more inclined to go way out of their way to help you solve your problem.
Well, Python is an open source, right?
It's a programming language.
Okay, yeah, so you can learn through that.
Yeah. So, and I would say that the easiest way to learn something gnarly, like this kind of thing, is to absolutely just walk into the nightmare, because there's no pretty way to do that in any way. You're never gonna find the right time. So if you just walk into it and you start to break it up logically, it's manageable. I'm not very bright. I absolutely figured it out, and for the things that were way above my head mathematically, I use a website called Upwork, and I just subcontract the things I can't program.
Okay.
So I can hire a Russian physicist for $30 an hour. So these are really knowledgeable people. They are super, nice. It's great. So that's a way to get there faster if the concepts were not coming to you, in an easy way. So, anyways, okay, so basically, the way this happened was, I immediately started after I did my algorithm and I was convinced that I needed to be trading stock. I felt like an easy way to get started was to take an online course. So I did the Ross Cameron day trading. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that.
Mhm.
It's a very bad way to go into trading. He teaches you this method of day trading in the first few seconds of the market, but usually with stocks that are gapping. So I paid thousands of dollars and took his course, and what I came away with was like anxiety attacks. I mean, he has these techniques. I don't even know if what he's doing he's legitimately doing, but he has these techniques where he's programmed his keyboard in a certain way so that when there's a stock or something that's gapping or showing pre-market volume, you can do this key combination and get into it quickly and then wait a few seconds and get out. He calls it his gap and go strategy. But it's nuts. It's madness. I would be very surprised if very few people could reproduce it. And you can't see him do any of it, so you don't even know if it's really going on. But anyways, I started out with these 3 programs that he recommended. It was Trade Ideas. I don't know if you're ever familiar with that one. It's trade-ideas.com. It's kind of like a scanner, but it looks for a little bit different type of events. And then you can have these little windows up, and you can get kind of combine them a little bit and get more information. So that's kind of his scanner. And then he uses a program, eSignal, which is just you're all familiar with that. Yeah. And then he uses the Benzinga news service. So he kind of pitches this strategy where you've got these 3 monitors, right? And you've got all this information that's blaring at you, and you're supposed to make cool, calm, clear decisions, which is it's just nuts, yeah. So it was complete overload, and I lost a ton of money. And you know, I in my life I have everything I do is difficult because of who I am, and nothing comes easy. So I stopped, and I just started to backtrack and break up the problem into its components. I felt like these were my areas where I wanted something different, so I just kind of make a wish list. I'm going to kind of read you that now, because that'll give you some better idea as to how I ended up where I did. So I also, let me just go with this one. Okay, so basically, this is my wish list. I wanted zero fee trading. I didn't want to pay fees. And there were a handful of places out there at the time that did that type of thing. The one that I was initially attracted to was Robinhood. Robinhood does not have an API. An API is an application programming interface. That's how I get computers to talk to applications without human intervention. So my plan was to use a program called Selenium, and what that does is it kind of simulates human type action. So what I could do with Selenium is I could say if a trade idea came, I could program Selenium to go in there and type in my number and type in my quantity and hit enter and wait for the next task. So that was my plan. That was an ill-conceived plan. It is dependent upon the company or the place that you're going to from not changing any of their code. If they make a code update, that template you made no longer fills out the form correctly. So you could be, if you were putting in 100, the price was $100 for the stock, but that was actually floating down to the quantity field, then you're getting this form being filled out wrong. So I kind of fell on its face fast, but I did use it for a while. That's kind of, I would call that hacking. That is not a legitimate way, a proper way of doing anything, so I'm not recommending that. So I knew in the beginning that I needed a real-time solution, because back-testing companies like Quantopian and those type of things, those are awesome for all of those people who don't have data, don't have intraday data. But you can't run code live. You can't trade on that live.
Sure.
So, huh?
I think you can.
You can now.
Okay.
3 years ago, it was back testing.
Okay.
So
You
there's
can
a couple
still
of
not
them.
run live.
What's that?
You can still not run live.
You
They
see?
have paper trading platform which they discontinued at the
Okay.
end of December.
Okay. Okay. So basically, I kind of overthink stuff. Like I had a list that's a mile long, and this is kind of the wish list. So it all happened in one way or another. But so anyways, I knew that I didn't want to program the whole application and then have a problem trading with it live. Like that would destroy the whole concept of what I was trying to do. So I realized through the Ross Cameron incident that I was psychologically affected by like having to do a lot quickly. It didn't work for me. Plus, I like to mess around with stuff, so when I was trading, I was constantly like looking and rethinking, and it was not for me in any way. So I wanted from the beginning to have the computer do it. But I have seen immensely complicated programs run in automation. When I connected lines up from Macmillan Realty, the sequence of events that connect their remote offices and sync their data is 300 steps. Automation was something I was super comfortable with, so I had no problem with programming this. I think of it like engineering. Like if you were going to launch the Apollo rocket, you know, you're an engineer, and you're gonna go through and you're gonna figure out all of the things that are required to launch a rocket. But anytime, if you have a problem, because it's science and it's constants and it's, you know, predictable outcomes to a large degree, if something doesn't go right, it's probably because you didn't think of it. Not so much. It's going to be the human error. It's going to be something largely in that area, not some change in physics that affects the way the rocket launches. So I figured in a naive way that I could think through all of these things that were going to come up and program. So there was a contingency. So basically I needed to, the other big thing is I was seeing all of these, when I was looking at the data, I was so confident of the patterns that I was seeing that I figured that I could calculate probability. I was sure that I could have something sent to me at the time of a trade that could just loosely guide me into the probable outcome of that trade. I thought, you know, that there was enough information there to do that kind of thing. So I think I'm off one slide. Yes, I'm off one slide. Yeah, I talked about all of these things. Same thing.
When you say live trade, what time scale are you to?
So let me go just a little bit longer, but it'll be covered in that thing. Okay, so the other thing is at that time I still was working, so I felt it very probable to receive this trade idea in the form of a text message on my phone. I felt like I would need to trade throughout the day because I wanted to algorithmically trade something. So I wanted a text message with various elements of the trade idea. So, and then I also felt at the end that I had read plenty of books on neural networking concepts. I felt like even the Jim Simmons story, I felt like there was something more I could do at the end of this to even give more confidence to a surer direction of a longer term trend, even if it was only a couple days. Just a nudge. That what I would use for my my ultimate go signal. So I'm going to explain all these concepts. We're going to go ahead and get into the details now. So what I did is I started from the very bottom and went up. So I did a data feed. I did a code to crunch all of the math for 43 studies, indicators, to be compiled by Python on the fly. And then I made a separate set of code that took those indicators and ran them through combinations, like studies, to find triggers. And then at the end, I ran it through a system to pre-qualify it, which is my first attempt at a neural network. And then the end signal talks to the TD Ameritrade API, where I actually execute the trade. So that's kind of the overview of what I'm going to talk about. It's kind of a total ground up solution. I don't think anyone would be stupid enough to do this, but this is what happened. So,
Excuse me.
yeah.
Is any of what you did was validated through live trades, or is this all theoretical?
I trade this now.
You trade it now?
Yeah, I trade.
How long?
I've traded it for about 40 days.
And is it working?
Yes.
Okay.
What I did is I came to the first meeting here, and in the parking lot, I asked you this silly question about 1%. And that, that was enough of an answer for me to put my money down on the line. So, I have $15,000 in an Ameritrade account that I float back and forth on the
Okay.
day. I trade, right now, in the last month, I trade 10 shares at a time, because I want to try to get enough time to go by to see that what I said the price was in the system, the code, matches all of the values of the actual trade.
Okay.
Yeah.
A different question
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
Quantopian. I found it to be total bullshit. So did you find anything useful in it?
Well, I
Because
didn't-
people only post whatever is not
Yeah,
working.
see, okay, I'm just being honest with you, like, you wanna have $1 million idea, go make Quantopian. Because you've got all these people who are gonna put their equations into your code, and you're gonna compete against each other for profits. What about the guy on the other side who sees all that code, who sees all those equations? This is a very strange model for me. Like, if I had the holy grail of equations, I certainly wouldn't go throw it into Quantopian
Correct.
and to compete against others for, you know, the best formulas. I mean, these places pop up everywhere, and being a person who's seen the backside of how things function, that's just, I don't even understand. I mean, this is madness. If it took me years to find what I found, so I certainly wouldn't throw it into a website and give it away. I don't know, that's just me being paranoid, but there's many of these places. I have a couple that I tried, but they play on the angle of the fact that probably the common person doesn't have access to intraday data, and they certainly aren't going to go pay for it. It's pricey. So I think that's why they pop up. I think that's what their point is, but I don't know. I don't trust them. My 2 cents. So, anyways, okay. So when I first started this, I needed data, and data's tricky. Data is in the sense of these 3 companies. These are ones I tried in the beginning. They offer a kind of like a client, kind of like, if you guys can remember back to AOL where you had the dialer and you dialed up and then you loaded AOL. It's similar to this. It's kind of like a VPN. You have this private little tube that's created through the internet back to your data source. So you load it up, but you can't, and you can programmatically talk to it, but you can't ask a ton of questions of it, because really if the internet is a tube, this is the tube in the tube, so it's smaller and it's encrypted and it's slow. So what I found in the beginning was I couldn't throw 1,000 symbols at it to get intraday data. So I had to vet way down. So either I needed to become really clear as to the symbols that I knew I wanted to look at for intraday, or I needed a different type of pipe. So what I ended up doing is going to a different type of service called Ignite. They provide a thing called a socket. And in the world of programming, a socket is kind of, would be an analogy, would be like a spigot. Like, you turn the water on and the water's coming out, right? You can't, like, you can turn the spigot down a little bit, but you're not precisely controlling the flow of water. You're just kind of doing something different to reduce it. So the spigot is like, or the socket is all of the stock market coming at you real time. And the trick to it is you can't drop any of the drops. So your bucket that you're holding the socket data from needs to be either really fast or really big. If you miss drops, you create gaps in the market. So if you have gaps, your data doesn't match the market now. So the data that comes through the socket is tick data. So it's not bars. So when you hold the tick data, there's just, it's all the volume of all of the market at any moment coming at you real time. So what happened when I tried to do this is it didn't work in San Diego. So I was collecting a lot of symbols. I took I'll tell you how I chose the symbols I did in a minute, but I was collecting over 1,000 symbols of real-time data, and I couldn't hold all of the drops. Also, it takes 14 milliseconds for light to travel across the country. Also, if there's any interruption with all of the interconnected devices across the country, you're gonna lose drops. So I would find times in the day, like lunchtime, when everyone decides to go jump on the internet, and I would have extreme latency, sometimes 500 milliseconds.
Oh, jeez.
It would just float all around the place. So it was better that I put a server there. It was a hard decision.
So you put a VM next to the exchange, right?
I didn't. I put a physical dedicated server in Equinix in New York.
Okay.
It's next to Ignite, so they'll give you a cross connect,
Yeah.
so you don't have to go through the public internet.
Right.
So there's, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, Phil. Sorry.
Okay, so really what ended up happening is this was so complicated to configure that I just needed, and I needed to make sure that I wasn't introducing a lot of variables, which way I would have to go back and try to troubleshoot later. Because data was the first calculation. Everything, yeah.
What's wrong with TradeStation data? I mean, why did you do that?
I didn't know about TradeStation.
Okay, but now that you do,
This was stupid, yeah.
would it have served?
Well, the hardest thing to do,
It's over.
Okay, the problem with TradeStation is you can't trust their feed.
Why?
It's slow, it's intermittent. It's like IB's feed is better than theirs, but it's in 5-second blocks. TradeStation tries to give you tech data and it's not reliable.
okay,
It's gonna lag the SIPI.
right.
I kind of disagree, or I use both.
That's fine.
And there's no
That's fine,
difference
I
between the two.
apologize for interrupting.
The thing that I found is a lot of these places, these places right here, they provide a feed, and I think the intended purpose of those applications is for you to download the data to be used in Excel.
Right.
Or that you're downloading maybe a couple symbols, maybe 10. But what I was doing was ridiculous for those services. They did not want to hand out data at those rates. So I went to the other service because it was flat fee, and it was used by companies that would not be an issue. Data quality would not be an issue. If there was a problem, it would be on my end, or it would be something inferior that I programmed. So yeah.
So in terms of the goal of this whole exercise you're doing, you're gonna be doing stuff where milliseconds matter. That you're not willing to trade.
No, all that happened is I had about 3 instances over a period of a week where lunchtime caused a greater than 60-second resync, and I lost all of the math on the minute.
Right.
So when you're working with data scientists, because the way they program is very unique. They have checksums along the line, so they know that complicated math, when it comes back around, it needs to add up to this or it needs to match that.
Sure.
So we keep for accuracy reasons, they initially detected this, because I'm not sitting there watching something not connect. I'm just saying, I'm seeing massive volume differences in my data and where I'm getting it from.
Right, but the
Yeah.
reason I'm asking that is, you admitted at the beginning of the talk that you had not been a stock,
Yeah,
trading person, and yet you're already jumping to what the best New York algorithmic traders are doing, trying to do things that no one else can do, except that they put machines close to the market, which you're jumping from having never done anything in this domain, all the way to
Okay,
you're competing with the best.
let me give you the chronology. You
Why not?
call them up and you say, hey, this doesn't work. And they'll say, let me see what you're pulling. Oh, you can't pull more than 500 symbols on these 3. They're consumer level products. So when you go and you Google data feed, you get about 3 people. You get a $20,000 BATS connection, or you get a Ignite. And when you call up Ignite, they say, we don't have a client. You have to put a machine here. That's the whole chronology of the way that happens. Data is in that data center. That's kind of what it's there for. So there's
But it didn't dawn on you to find, for example, a system that works on end-of-day data and get that to work, having never done this before?
No.
Before you started to do microseconds?
No, because the entire problem with the whole thing is will it run live? That's the common problem.
Many people trade end-of-day live trading.
I didn't know what strategies I was using. This is just the path I took.
That's my question,
Yeah.
what kind of trades were you intending to perform? when
Okay,
you joined us?
so I can tell you, let me get just a little farther, it's totally gonna nail that one
Okay.
solidly. Because, do you want me to answer that in a different way?
That's fine, you
No.
keep on going, keep
Yeah,
on going,
okay.
you're doing fine. Keep
Because
on.
there wasn't, no, I don't want to appear that, it's important to me that you don't think that I had any other information, because I didn't. This was literally the only other option, short of those three services that were available to somebody who wasn't willing to do like a year contract on a commit for a line. So that was my solution. When I started out with them, I subscribed to 250 symbols, and it was $200. So not a huge cost. It's $1 a
Per
symbol
month?
per month.
Got it.
It's $1 a symbol with Ignite in their exchange. So okay, so here's how the system determines which symbols to choose. This is something that evolved. Okay, we'll pause. There were 3 versions of this software before the version you're seeing now. So you're just gonna, it's not worth explaining how I came to this point, but this is what was my ultimate formula for deciding what symbols I took from Ignite. I decided to take anything over $10, any symbol over $10. What I did is I took the previous, I wrote a little program. This symbol right here with the 2 little snakes is a Python symbol. It just means it's a code application that's running. So this piece of code goes to the previous day's data, and it takes any stock that's over $10. It takes any stock that traded 250,000 shares as an average over the previous 5 days. It counts up all of the tick data, and it only takes symbols that had 1,000 unique trades. It does this because there was many times when there would be 3 or 4 big trades on a symbol, which would not be indicative of something that was actually liquid. So this kind of solved that problem.
That's a zillion stocks.
No, it's not. It's
No?
1,400.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Out of the 6,000.
correct. I do the same thing.
So, and then the price range, this is important because this is my attempt at, I couldn't find a way to pull the float. So I didn't have a programmatic way to pull the float. So I tried scraping FinViz for a while, but it was not reliable. So what I ended up doing is kind of generating my own way to see that it was moving. So I took the daily high minus the daily low, and I needed that number to be greater than 1% of the stock price. So it moved.
Is that an average over 10 days or
It's an average, it's just the day before.
just the day?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
So you're looking for high volatility
Yeah.
recently?
yeah, or 5 days.
Okay.
It's 5 days. So does that make sense to everyone?
Do you want any tips to
I would
add?
love tips.
Okay, the biggest tip is, or the only thing I'm
Yeah.
concerned with, is bid-ask spread percentage. You take the bid minus the ask divided by the price. That tells you what to trade. That's
Okay.
what I do.
Okay. Okay, so that's how I generated the symbols list that I would call up Ignite and say, these are the ones I want in my feed. So, in the beginning, when I was developing this, I just used, like 200 symbols that were, yeah.
For the last, you change the daily high and daily low greater than 1% of the previous days, the same.
The close,
Yes.
yeah. The close,
Got it.
yeah. Okay, so any questions? So, the next step in this is I decided to make, indicators. I found that, I wanted to make the scanner that I couldn't find. What I wanted is, when I was after the Ross Cameron incident, I decided to go and kind of like read about indicators, and I love the concepts of the multiple timeframes, but I couldn't find, I couldn't find a scanner that scanned multiple timeframes with indicators, and overlaid the two results. So, like I wanted the 8-period EMA above the 21-period EMA on a 15-minute time frame, and on the daily, I wanted price to be above the 50 SMA. I couldn't find things that would do like that, that let me query like that, so I programmed it. So what I did is I programmed 43 indicators. I have a list of them on the website. I'll give you at the end. The indicators are hybridized. So when I'm running my code to calculate indicators, I'm running them also on off period lengths. So like I'm running for a database of like EMAs, I'll just run 1 through 200 because I don't know what I'm gonna want later. And if I have them all ready to go on the minute, on the 5-minute, on the 10-minute, whatever, it makes dialing in the strategy easier later versus going back and forth. So I left out an important piece. I gotta go back. So on the data collection, that server that sits on the East Coast, what it does is it takes tick data, real time, and at a 5-minute interval, it builds an open, high, low, closed bar. Okay? So 5-minute bars will be added together to make 10-minute bars. 5 minutes will make 15, 5 minutes will make 30, 5 minutes will make 60, 5 minutes will make 1 day.
So that's how you get your multiple timeframes.
That's how I get my time frames. So I build the bars there. The bars are finished, the bars are on time, ready to go. That's what I send to the application after this one.
Okay.
That was the best way that I found to solve all of the problems.
So
Now,
your minimum time frame on your consolidator is, above tick data is 5 minutes?
it's 5 minutes, yeah. I tried to do 1 minute in the beginning, but you can't, I don't have the computing power to even come close to anything that anyone's doing out there. So that's the fastest it would run. Would be before the next iteration would start. It needed
Right.
that time period to
And
build.
on 200 symbols, that's really a
Yeah,
tough job,
so-
that's hard.
So that's what ended up working for that. Okay, so basically what's going to happen is these 5-minute bars, when they're completed, they're going to be sent to another machine. That machine is going to run kind of in a loop in the stock market hours, and it's going to be constantly recalculating those 43 indicators, so that they're ready for me to ask questions of in a subsequent step. So yeah.
When you say 23 indicators, you also mentioned the word hybridized
Right.
indicator. When you say it's a hybrid, meaning multiple time frame or 2 indicators or 3 indicators blended in one?
Like I'll run more than one RSI on off periods. So I'll run it on 12, 13, 14, and 15.
And that's what you mean by hybrid?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm trying to, what I found is when I first tried to do this, I tried to use standard default periods for indicators, and I tried to fit them into scenarios. So if I used, the default RSI, I found that if I, moved it to 12, no, scratch that. When I first started this, I tried to reduce profits, increase stop losses, and try to fit a trade into an existing situation. That just wasn't something that I could reproduce when I ran it live. So that was a previous version. So what this version does is more of a brute force method, and I'll explain it to you.
Question.
Yeah,
So you've got, did you say 23 or 43?
I said 43.
43
They're
indicators.
variations, yeah.
And is that 43 over multiple timeframes?
Yes, it's gonna collect, I got it all right here, just
Okay.
one more slide, we're there. So, Okay, so just so you understand, because I think it's important to note that those, let me just make sure we're off one. Okay, so here's basically the question I was trying to ask the scanner that I could never find. I was trying to say, show me all the stock symbols in the 1 hour time frame where the 8-period EMA crossed above the 13-period EMA, while the RSI is less than 30, and we're below the midline of a 200-period Donchian channel. Also have the close be above the 50-period SMA on a daily time frame. I wanted multiple time frames. I wanted dynamic questions to ask. So the only way I could figure out to make that happen was to have all of those studies pre-calculated so that I could ask, there's a program called Microsoft SQL, it stands for Subject Query Language. It's a database program. It allows you to quickly ask questions like this. I wanted to fire off questions programmatically of the data so that, I mean, you can call it scanning, I guess. It's not scanning. It's snapshots of the market in moments. That's the question that I wanted all along since the day one, but I couldn't find software that did it. You guys probably know
Are
something.
you changing these questions as you go along? You're asking this question, then you ask another question, or you want continuous data feed of this particular question?
No, this is an example I'm using out of context. This is how I would like to talk to the data. What I am doing is I'm asking the same question over and over.
So why not use something like Spark or one of your stream datas? Because Spark speaks SQL, so you could ask that question and it would alert you on a continuous
Yeah,
basis.
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't think of it. So, anybody got any questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to track what you're doing, what was your goal as far as number of trades per day? Or
So
range?
when I was reading, initially, I stumbled upon this concept of big number theory. It's where you, in order to dilute your profit, dilute your losses, it was more profitable to trade a lot. So I was looking, this whole thing is about a 1% stock movement.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to find a scenario where I can have a 1% movement with all these conditions met, like 6 or 9 times a day.
Hmm.
And I want to hold it for as little as possible, like hours to a day or two. So that was what I was thinking when I made it.
So effectively, you're kind of day trading, and you're trying to collect 1%.
Yeah, that's kind of,
And close your position at the end of it.
yes, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if your holding period is on the order of an hour, why did you have to do all of this real time? All the crunching and the receiving the data and so on?
Because I wouldn't be able to detect the event at its absolute spawn
Okay,
point.
so I
So
see.
even though it's a higher time frame, you know, I'm still only practically looking at like 30 cents on these trades. So every second is critical to capture the beginning of the movement.
So you hold up to an hour, but you want it to be spot on as when the event
I
starts.
don't think that's fair to describe it as an hour. I think it's more like 6 hours to 2 or 3 days.
Swing trade.
Yeah, it's not day trading. It's some of it is day trading. It just happens how it happens. But I would say from what I'll show you, like most of them are just a day.
And based on that horizon, you found that 10 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute would make a difference?
Well, it's not something that I think I could really quantify. I don't know. You know, the stocks move how they move. Some of them, you know, if, you know, a $100 stock might move, you know, $1 in a day, and 1%. I gotta get all I can. So I felt like focusing on being as fast as possible was the better logic.
So because you're using 5-minute bars, there's no decision is made in less than 5 minutes, correct?
Well, you've got lag on your indicators too.
I've got lag on my indicators, and I've got all kinds of lag
Right.
in trying to calculate all this crap. like quickly.
Yeah, but you don't have latency so much as you have.
Exactly.
You still have indicator lag.
Yeah, yeah, so there's, but basically, I'm trying to pull the indicator, you know, as close as I can to the start of the
Of the
period.
event, yeah.
So, yeah,
Sorry, I need to ask what kind of hardware you have in connection?
the Equinix,
You know, what kind of hardware, like computer, and what kind of internet connection are you using for this?
I'll get to it, I got a whole
Oh.
page on it.
Oh, okay.
That was a page my wife wanted me to leave out, but I thought it was cool, so I left it in.
We think it's cool too.
Yeah, so, okay, so currently the system is configured with 43 indicators. There's a lag of about 20 seconds. When the time period closes, example, the close of the 1 hour bar to when the data becomes available to query. It takes about 60 cores of computing power to process 1,000 stocks across 3 time periods. So the 20-second delay can be improved upon if I threw more cores at it. Does everyone know what cores are?
Yes,
Okay, so cores, in the sense that I'm using them, are Amazon Web Services cores. So you guys, I don't know if you know this, but Amazon is a great company, not because of Amazon, but it's because of Amazon Web Services. That's like how Netflix works. That's how all these things are. They're great work. So I can rent 64 cores on a server at Amazon in Virginia, close to my data in New York, for $1.57 an hour.
Is that cloud-based or?
It's all cloud.
Huh? It's not?
It's all cloud.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
all
that's
cloud.
what
That's the running cost. If I turn it off at nighttime, it's less. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay.
cool.
Okay, so that was 8. Okay, so this is basically how the collection of the, so I made this all for a website, right? And then I figured there was no way I could show you a website because it was vertical. So I chopped all of the images. So the left image is like the whole image I made, and I put it on the website. But the image in the middle, this is just the top piece of it. So as I move through it, we're gonna go down the image on the left. Does that make sense? Okay. So these three databases that hold these bars now are sent over to Amazon. And I've got 15-minute bars, 1-hour bars, and 1-day bars. There is not enough movement. I'll leave that out. These are the time periods that worked for what I did. I calculated other time periods, but they weren't of any benefit, so I stopped processing them. It's just now down to these 3. So I have a database that pulls these finished bars, and then I have these templates that I've created for what is the EMA and what is the RSI. And they run on the data to create this finished row in a database so that I can make queries against it. And I'm using the Elastic Cloud Computing feature in Amazon, if anyone wants to look about that. It allows you to rent processor cores, but it allows you to run 2 threads per core.
Mhm.
So if I rent 64 cores, I can run 124 parallel processes.
Mhm.
So I can mow through faster the more cores I throw at it. So
Just curious, would it be better to have 120 pure cores or 120 threads?
it's not that. It ended up being this. Check it out. The people at Amazon have these old machines that don't have the clock speed, gigahertz, that other servers might. So you might be having a core that's running at 1.5 gigahertz versus 2.5. So you don't know what you're gonna get as far as the speed of the core. So if you don't lock into an arrangement with them on a platform, you don't get the same machine twice. It's a cloud application. So if that cloud instance floats to something else, and then suddenly you're running slower, it's because you're on a different physical
Right.
chipset than you were before. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, does it make any damn difference? I mean, like, what the hell, you know,
I
you're
know.
trading.
I'm very detail
Sam,
It-
Sam,
it's
this
all-
is a, this is
well,
a
let-
hardware
let-
network guy.
Right.
That's
Well, let me-
diving into this.
Let me talk to him, okay? So, I'm saying, I mean, does it end up being worth it to become so fast and so sophisticated? Because I traded with people, and one of the programmers told the guy that owns the company, that I have a 20-second delay or some shit like that, and the owner of the company just fired me. And at the end of the day, didn't make any fucking difference. So what I'm asking you,
No,
I
it
hate.
doesn't. And
Okay,
here's why.
thank you,
But here's why.
thank you.
What ends up happening, like you were saying,
Yeah.
about the I don't know your name. What was your name?
Sam.
Behind you.
Oh, Ian, sorry.
Ian, sorry.
Yeah.
So what Ian was saying, like, you know, all of this speed and time, but what ends up happening is, like, when you buy it, ultimately, like, you know, I mean, I've seen it where you buy it and then it trails down a little bit or it trails up a little bit, and you're within like 3 or 4 cents of your goal was, so it doesn't matter.
Mm.
It's so random at the point where you actually execute the trade. It doesn't matter. None of this is like predictable at that point. These are just like super educated guesses. So I say no.